standing in my sister Victoria's marble foyer, watching my 8-year-old daughter Emma sob into my shoulder. I felt something shatter inside me forever. The birthday party invitations scattered across the floor told a story I never saw coming. Every cousin invited except Emma. Victoria's smug smile as she called my children discount store kids replayed in my mind like a broken record. But what I discovered in her study that afternoon would expose a family conspiracy so devastating it would tear apart everything I thought I knew about blood loyalty and the people who were supposed to love us unconditionally. Before we dive into this family revenge story that changed everything, let me ask where you are watching from today. If you have ever dealt with toxic family members who think money makes them better than everyone else, hit that like button and subscribe, because you are going to want to see how this story ends. Trust me, the karma that comes for Victoria will leave you absolutely speechless. 3 weeks earlier, Emma had been bouncing around our small apartment, clutching a glittery invitation to her cousin Madison's 10th birthday party. My sister Victoria had always thrown elaborate celebrations for her daughter, but this one promised to be especially grand, according to the gold-embossed card that probably cost more than our monthly grocery budget. "Mommy, can I wear my new pink dress?" Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The one Grandma bought me for church." I smiled and nodded, though my stomach twisted slightly. Victoria and her husband Derek lived in the wealthy Elmwood Hills subdivision where every house looked like it belonged in a magazine and every car in the driveway cost more than I made in 2 years. As a single mother working as a dental hygienist, I did my best to provide for Emma and her younger brother Jake, but there was no denying we lived in a different world than Victoria's family. The party was set for Saturday afternoon at their house. Victoria had mentioned something about hiring professional entertainers and having the event catered. When I offered to bring a dish to contribute, she had laughed that tinkling laugh of hers and said not to worry about it, that she had everything handled. Saturday morning arrived with Emma practically vibrating with excitement. I had saved up to buy Madison a thoughtful gift, a beautiful art set that I knew she would love since she was always drawing. Jake was spending the day with my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who had become like a grandmother to my children since our actual parents lived across the country. We pulled up to Victoria's house in my aging Honda Civic, which looked particularly shabby next to the lineup of luxury SUVs and sports cars already parked along the circular driveway. Emma clutched her carefully wrapped present, wearing her pink dress with white tights and the black Mary Janes we had found on clearance. The front door opened before we even rang the bell. Victoria appeared in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her makeup flawless despite being in the middle of hosting a party. "Oh," she said, her smile faltering slightly when she saw us. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "We are here for Madison's party. Emma has been looking forward to this all week." Victoria glanced around nervously, then stepped outside and pulled the door mostly closed behind her. "Sarah, I think there has been some misunderstanding. This is a very exclusive event. We are only having family over today." "But we are family," I said, confusion making my voice sharper than I intended. "Emma is Madison's cousin." "Well, yes, technically," Victoria said, her voice taking on that condescending tone I remembered from our childhood. "But Derek's family is here, and some very important people from his work. This is not really the right crowd for someone like Emma." The words hung in the air between us like poison. Someone like Emma. My beautiful, innocent 8-year-old daughter who had spent days picking out the perfect outfit and practicing the birthday song she wanted to sing for her cousin. "What exactly do you mean by that?" I asked, though part of me already knew and dreaded the answer. Victoria sighed, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Sarah, you know I love you and the kids, but let us be honest here. This party is costing us thousands of dollars. These people expect a certain standard. Your children, bless their hearts, they just do not really fit with this crowd. Maybe we can have them over another time for a quiet family dinner or something?" Emma had been standing quietly beside me, but I saw her face crumple as Victoria's words sank in. Even at 8, she understood rejection when she heard it. "There is no room for your discount store kids at this party," Victoria continued with a little laugh, as if she had made a clever joke instead of crushing a child's heart. "Surely you understand." That was the moment something fundamental shifted inside me. I had spent years making excuses for Victoria's behavior, telling myself she did not mean to be cruel, that success had just changed her. But watching Emma's face as those words hit her, seeing my baby girl realize she was not good enough for her own family, ignited a rage I had never experienced before. "Come on, sweetheart," I said to Emma, taking her hand. "We are going home." Emma burst into tears as we walked back to the car. "Why does Aunt Victoria not want me at the party? Did I do something wrong?" I knelt down and pulled her close, my heart breaking as her small body shook with sobs. "You did nothing wrong, baby. Nothing at all. Aunt Victoria is the one who made a mistake." As I held Emma, I made a silent promise. Victoria thought she could treat my children like second-class family members because we did not have money. She thought her wealth gave her the right to humiliate and exclude us. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. But first, I needed to understand exactly who I was dealing with. I had always known Victoria was selfish and materialistic, but the cruelty she had just displayed suggested there might be more darkness lurking beneath her polished surface than I had ever imagined. That evening, after Emma had finally cried herself to sleep, I sat in my small living room and began to think. Victoria's behavior today had been shocking, but as I replayed our interactions over the past few years, I started to see a pattern I had been blind to before. The subtle put-downs about my job, my apartment, my choices as a single mother. The way she always found excuses why Emma and Jake could not join family activities that involved her wealthy social circle. I pulled out my laptop and began to do something I should have done years ago. I started researching my sister and her perfect life, and what I found in those first few hours of digging would be just the beginning of uncovering a web of lies that went deeper than I could have ever imagined. Monday morning brought a new determination as I dropped Emma off at school. She was still subdued from the weekend's humiliation, asking me again why Aunt Victoria did not want her at the party. I promised her we would have our own celebration, just the three of us, but I could see the hurt still lingering in her young eyes. At work during my lunch break, I continued the research I had started Sunday night. What began as simple curiosity about Victoria's lifestyle had quickly evolved into something much more systematic. I started with social media, scrolling through years of posts showcasing Victoria and Derek's seemingly perfect life. The photos told a story of endless luxury, expensive vacations to Europe and the Caribbean, designer clothing, jewelry that sparkled even through phone screens, cars that cost more than most people's houses. Derek's construction company must be doing incredibly well. I thought better than I had ever realized. But something nagged at me as I scrolled through post after post. The timeline seemed off somehow. Victoria's lifestyle had escalated dramatically about 3 years ago, right around the time Derek had won several major city contracts for road construction and municipal building projects. Before that, their posts showed a comfortable but much more modest lifestyle. I began digging deeper into Derek's business, Morrison Construction. The company website was professionally designed and showcased an impressive portfolio of completed projects throughout our city and surrounding areas. Municipal buildings, roadwork, bridge repairs, school renovations. The kind of steady, reliable work that built wealth over time. What I found when I started looking into the public records, however, painted a very different picture. During my extended lunch break, I drove to City Hall, and requested to see the public bidding records for municipal contracts over the past 5 years. As a citizen, this information was freely available, though it took some persistence to navigate the bureaucracy and locate the right documents. The pattern that emerged made my blood run cold. Morrison Construction had won an unusual number of bids, often by margins so narrow it seemed almost impossible. More disturbing was the fact that Derek's company frequently submitted bids that came in just slightly under much larger, more established firms with better track records and more resources. But the real smoking gun came when I cross-referenced the dates of Derek's winning bids with our city council meetings. My heart pounded as I discovered that Derek's biggest contracts had been approved during periods when Councilman Robert Hayes was the deciding vote on the Municipal Works Committee. Robert Hayes, who happened to be Derek's golf partner. Robert Hayes, whose daughter went to the same private school as Madison. Robert Hayes, who had been at several of Victoria and Derek's dinner parties over the past few years based on Victoria's social media posts. I sat in my car outside City Hall, staring at the documents I had photocopied, feeling sick to my stomach. If what I suspected was true, Derek had not built his wealth through honest business practices. He had been buying municipal contracts through his friendship with a corrupt city councilman. That evening, after putting Emma and Jake to bed, I called my friend Lisa, who worked as an investigative reporter for our local newspaper. Lisa and I had been friends since college, and I knew she had won several awards for exposing municipal corruption in neighboring cities. "Sarah, what you are describing sounds like classic bid rigging," Lisa said after I explained what I had found. "The narrow margins, the pattern of wins, the timing with city council votes. If you are right about the connection between Derek and this councilman, you could be looking at a major corruption scandal. But I need more evidence, right? What I have is all circumstantial. You need financial records, communications between Derek and Hayes, maybe bank records showing unusual payments or transfers, the kind of stuff that would require either a whistleblower or a formal investigation to uncover." I hung up, feeling both excited and terrified. If Derek was corrupt, then Victoria's wealth was built on stolen money. Money that had been meant for legitimate contractors and public works projects. Money that ultimately came from taxpayer funds, but proving it would be dangerous. People who stole millions from public contracts were not likely to take kindly to being exposed. Over the next week, I became obsessed with gathering more evidence. I started showing up at city council meetings, taking notes on voting patterns and contract approvals. I researched other contractors who had lost bids to Morrison Construction and found a pattern of complaints about the bidding process, though none had been formally investigated. The breakthrough came when I remembered that Victoria had always been careless with details when she was nervous or excited. During family gatherings, she had a tendency to overshare when she had been drinking. I scrolled back through years of her social media posts, looking for anything that might provide a clue about Derek's business dealings. Most of the posts were carefully curated photos of their glamorous lifestyle, but buried in the comments on older posts, I found something interesting. 3 years ago, around the time Derek's business had really taken off, Victoria had posted a photo from what appeared to be a celebration dinner. The caption read, "Celebrating Derek's biggest contract yet. Robert was right about timing being everything in business. So grateful for friends who believe in us." Robert, as in Robert Hayes, the city councilman. I screenshot the post and several others that mentioned Robert in contexts that seemed more personal than professional. Victoria had deleted some of the more revealing posts from recent years, but she had not thought to go back and clean up her older content. Armed with this new evidence, I reached out to Lisa again. She agreed to meet me for coffee to review everything I had gathered. "This is good circumstantial evidence," she said, spreading my documents across the coffee shop table. "But we need something concrete. Financial records, recorded conversations, documents that prove money changed hands, or that Hayes was giving Derek inside information about bids." "How do we get that?" Lisa was quiet for a moment, then looked at me seriously. "There is one way, but it is risky. If Derek is as dirty as we think, he probably keeps records of his transactions with Hayes. Insurance, in case Hayes ever tries to turn on him. Corrupt people always keep insurance. You mean his home office? Or his business office? Somewhere he would feel safe storing sensitive documents. The question is whether you are willing to take the risk to find them. I thought about Emma's tear-streaked face, about Victoria calling my children discount store kids, about all the legitimate contractors who had lost work to Derek's corrupt schemes. What kind of risk are we talking about? The kind where, if you get caught, you could face serious criminal charges, breaking and entering theft, possibly more depending on what you find and how you find it. I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Lisa was suggesting. But then I thought about all the money Derek and Victoria had stolen, all the public projects that had been compromised by their greed, all the families who had been cheated out of honest work. Tell me what I would need to do. The next 2 weeks were a blur of careful planning and reconnaissance. Lisa connected me with Marcus, a former private investigator who specialized in corporate fraud cases. Marcus had left the profession after getting burned out on insurance cases, but he still had contacts in law enforcement and knew how to gather evidence without crossing legal lines. The key is to find a way to access Derek's records legally, Marcus explained during our first meeting at a diner outside town. We need either his permission, a court order, or evidence that falls into our hands through legitimate means. What counts as legitimate means? I asked. Documents left in public spaces, information shared voluntarily, anything posted on social media or filed with public agencies. The trick is to position ourselves so that when Derek makes a mistake, we are ready to capitalize on it. Marcus had done some preliminary research into Derek's business operations and confirmed my suspicions about the contract bidding. He had also discovered something I had missed. Derek had recently purchased several expensive properties that seemed inconsistent with the income Morrison Construction should have been generating from legitimate contracts. He bought a vacation home in the Hamptons last year for $2.4 million, Marcus said, sliding a property record across the table. He also owns rental properties worth about $3 million total, and he just bought a yacht that is berthed at the marina downtown. Conservative estimate of his net worth is somewhere north of $8 million. The numbers made my head spin. Derek's company had been in business for only 7 years, and construction companies typically operated on thin profit margins. There was no way he could have accumulated that kind of wealth legitimately. Here is what I think we should do, Marcus continued. Derek is planning to bid on the biggest municipal contract in our city's history next month. The new courthouse complex project worth about $20 million. If he wins that bid through corrupt means, we will have him dead to rights on a federal corruption charge. How do we prove the corruption? We need to catch Hayes and Derek coordinating before the bid submission. Phone calls, meetings, evidence that Hayes is giving Derek inside information about competitor bids or rigging the selection process. Lisa leaned forward. I have been thinking about this and I might have an idea. Victoria loves to show off their wealth, right? What if we could get invited to one of their parties, especially one where Hayes is also present? I almost laughed. Victoria just banned my children from a birthday party because they are not wealthy enough. She is not going to invite me to a dinner party with city officials. Not as yourself, Lisa said with a smile. But what if you were someone else? Someone Victoria would desperately want to impress? Over the next hour, we hatched a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Lisa would pose as a freelance writer working on a lifestyle piece about successful women entrepreneurs for a regional magazine. She would approach Victoria about featuring her in an article about how she had built her perfect life while supporting her husband's business. Victoria's ego would never be able to resist that kind of attention. Meanwhile, I would attend the interview as Lisa's photographer wearing a disguise sophisticated enough to fool Victoria from a distance, but subtle enough not to arouse suspicion. Marcus would provide surveillance equipment that could capture audio and video from the dinner party Victoria would inevitably invite Lisa to attend. This is completely crazy, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt a thrill of excitement. After years of being treated like the poor relation, I was finally going to turn the tables on Victoria. Crazy plans work because no one expects them, Marcus replied. Victoria thinks she is untouchable. People like that get careless when they feel safe. The first phase of our plan went better than expected. Lisa contacted Victoria through her business email explaining that the magazine was doing a feature on women who had successfully balanced family life with supporting their spouse's entrepreneurial ventures. Victoria responded within hours, practically glowing with excitement about being featured in a real magazine. They scheduled the initial interview for the following Thursday afternoon at Victoria's house. Lisa would bring a photographer to capture lifestyle shots for the article, giving me the perfect cover to access the house and scope out Derek's home office. I spent the intervening days practicing my disguise and learning to operate the sophisticated recording equipment Marcus had provided. The plan was to plant listening devices in Derek's office during the interview, then retrieve them after Victoria's dinner party when we had captured enough evidence of corruption. Remember, we need evidence of Derek and Hayes coordinating bid information. Marcus reminded me the night before the interview. Anything about rigged contracts inside information or payments to Hayes. Without that, all we have is suspicious financial records that could theoretically be explained by legitimate business success. Thursday arrived with unseasonably warm weather that worked perfectly for our plan. I dressed in professional photographer attire with a wig that changed my hair color from blonde to dark brown and glasses that subtly altered the shape of my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Lisa picked me up in her car and we drove to Victoria's house. My heart hammered as we pulled into the circular driveway where Emma had been humiliated just 3 weeks earlier. Today, I was here on a mission that would either expose Derek and Victoria's crimes or land me in prison. Victoria answered the door, wearing another designer outfit, her smile radiant with anticipation of her magazine feature. She barely glanced at me as she ushered Lisa inside, too excited about being interviewed to pay attention to the photographer. I have been thinking about this article all week, Victoria gushed as she led us into her perfectly appointed living room. I have so much to share about how Derek and I built our dream life together. It has been such an incredible journey. As Lisa set up for the interview, I moved around the house under the pretense of scouting good locations for photos. The layout was exactly as I remembered from family gatherings over the years. Derek's home office was located down a hallway off the main living area behind a heavy wooden door that was currently closed. Sarah, Lisa said, using the fake name we had agreed on for my photographer persona. Could you get some shots of the kitchen? The marble countertops would be perfect for the lifestyle angle. Victoria beamed with pride as she led us toward the kitchen, launching into a detailed explanation of their recent renovation that had cost more than most people earned in 2 years. While she was distracted explaining the imported Italian tiles, I slipped away from the group and headed toward Derek's office. The door was locked, but Marcus had anticipated this possibility. He had given me a set of lockpicks and taught me the basics of getting past simple residential locks. My hands shook as I worked the picks, listening for footsteps and praying Victoria would stay focused on her interview. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 90 seconds, the lock clicked open. Derek's office was exactly what I had expected: expensive furniture awards and photos documenting his business success, and a massive desk that dominated the room. I quickly planted the listening devices Marcus had given me in locations where they would be hidden, but still pick up conversations clearly. One went under Derek's desk, another behind a bookshelf, and the third inside a decorative plant near the seating area where Derek entertained guests. As I was finishing with the last device, I heard Victoria's voice getting closer. I quickly closed the office door, locked it again, and slipped back toward the kitchen just as Victoria and Lisa rounded the corner. "There you are," Victoria said. "I was just telling Lisa about our dinner party this Saturday. We are having some very influential people over, including a city councilman. Would you and Lisa like to join us? It would be perfect for the article to show how we entertain." Lisa and I exchanged a quick glance. The dinner party was exactly what we had hoped for, but we had not expected Victoria to invite us so quickly. "That sounds amazing," Lisa replied. "What a great way to show how you balance your social life with supporting Derek's business." As we finished the interview and prepared to leave, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. Phase 1 of our plan was complete. The listening devices were in place, and we had invitations to what would hopefully be the dinner party where Derek incriminated himself. The rest of the week crawled by as we waited for Saturday evening. Marcus had given us sophisticated recording equipment that would capture everything the listening devices picked up, and Lisa had arranged for a backup plan in case we needed to leave the party quickly. "Remember," Marcus said during our final planning meeting, "you are there to observe and record. Do not try to confront Derek or Hayes directly. We need them to incriminate themselves naturally." Saturday evening arrived with perfect autumn weather. Lisa and I dressed carefully for the dinner party, choosing outfits that would allow us to blend in with Victoria's wealthy social circle while still maintaining our cover as journalist and photographer. As we pulled up to Victoria's house for the second time that week, I felt my pulse quicken. Through the windows, I could see well-dressed guests moving around inside wine glasses glinting in the soft lighting. Somewhere in that house was Robert Hayes, the corrupt councilman who had helped Derek steal millions of dollars in public contracts. Tonight, we would finally get the evidence we needed to bring them both down. Or we would get caught trying, and everything would fall apart. I took a deep breath and followed Lisa toward the front door. There was no turning back now. This was the moment when justice would finally be served one way or another. Victoria's house gleamed like something from a magazine shoot as Lisa and I approached the front door. Through the tall windows, I could see at least 20 guests mingling in the elegantly furnished rooms, their designer clothing and jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers. This was Victoria's world, the exclusive social circle that my children had been deemed unworthy to enter. "Remember, we are here for the magazine article," Lisa whispered as we rang the doorbell. "Let me do most of the talking." Victoria opened the door wearing a stunning black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her face lit up when she saw Lisa, though her eyes barely registered my presence behind the photographer disguise. "Lisa, darling, you look absolutely gorgeous," Victoria gushed, air-kissing Lisa's cheeks. Come in, come in. Everyone is dying to meet the journalist who is writing about our success story." As we entered the foyer, the sound of refined conversation and clinking glasses washed over us. Victoria immediately began introducing Lisa to her guests, describing her as a prestigious lifestyle writer working on an exclusive feature. I hung back with my camera playing the part of the invisible photographer while scanning the room for Robert Hayes. I found him near the bar, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. He was deep in conversation with Derek, their heads bent close together as they spoke in low tones. Even from across the room, there was something conspiratorial about their body language that made my pulse quicken. "And this is our photographer," Victoria said suddenly, appearing beside me with a group of guests. "She is documenting our evening for the lifestyle spread." I nodded politely and raised my camera using the lens as cover to observe Derek and Hayes more closely. Marcus's listening devices should be picking up their conversation, but I wanted to position myself to capture any visual evidence of their collaboration. As the evening progressed, I moved through the party under the pretense of taking candid shots of Victoria's perfect entertaining style. The guests were exactly what I had expected: wealthy professionals, business owners, and their wives, all reveling in their exclusive social status. The kind of people who would think my children were beneath their notice. The breakthrough came about an hour into the party, when Derek and Hayes stepped onto the back patio for what appeared to be a private conversation. I slipped through the French doors behind them, staying in the shadows near a large decorative planter where I could hear their words clearly. "The courthouse project bids are due Monday," Hayes was saying, his voice low but audible. "I have seen the preliminary numbers from the other contractors. Morrison needs to come in at exactly $19.2 million to win." Derek nodded, pulling out his phone to make a note. What about the Davidson firm? They have been undercutting us on the last few projects. I have it on good authority that their bid is going to have some technical disqualifications. Hayes replied with a cold smile. Something about their insurance documentation not being quite up to standard. Amazing how these paperwork errors just happen sometimes. My hands trembling slightly, I raised my camera and began taking photos of their conversation. The lighting was dim, but Marcus had provided me with equipment that could capture clear images even in low-light conditions. This is the big one, Robert, Derek continued. $20 million. That is enough to set us up for the next 5 years minimum. Your usual percentage, of course. Hayes chuckled. Of course, though I think my consulting fees might need to go up slightly. The risk level on a project this size requires additional compensation. They shook hands, and I quickly stepped back into the shadows as they turned to come back inside. My heart was pounding so hard, I was sure they would hear it. But they walked past without noticing me. I had just witnessed, photographed, and hopefully recorded a direct conversation about bid rigging and bribery involving a $20 million municipal contract. It was exactly the evidence we needed to expose their corruption. As Derek and Hayes rejoined the party, I found Lisa near the dining room, still playing her role as the enthusiastic lifestyle journalist. I think I have enough photos for tonight, I whispered to her. We should probably leave soon. Lisa nodded almost imperceptibly and began wrapping up her conversations with Victoria's guests. We needed to leave before anyone became suspicious of our behavior. And I was anxious to get the recording equipment back to Marcus so we could review everything we had captured. Victoria, this has been absolutely magical, Lisa said as we prepared to leave. I have more than enough material for a fantastic article. You should expect to see it in print within the next few weeks. Victoria practically glowed with satisfaction. I cannot wait to see how it turns out. This is going to be such wonderful publicity for Derek's business. If only she knew, I thought grimly. Derek's business was about to get publicity all right, just not the kind Victoria was expecting. As we walked back to Lisa's car, I felt a mixture of triumph and terror. We had the evidence we needed to expose Derek and Hayes, but now came the dangerous part, making sure the recordings were clear enough to prosecute and figuring out how to present them to law enforcement without revealing how we had obtained them. Did you get what we needed? Lisa asked as soon as we were safely in her car and driving away from Victoria's neighborhood. I think so, I replied, my voice shaky with adrenaline. Derek and Hayes were discussing the courthouse project bid openly. If the listening devices picked up what I heard, we have them dead to rights on corruption charges. We drove straight to Marcus's office, where he was waiting with sophisticated audio equipment to analyze the recordings from the listening devices. The next few hours would determine whether our risky plan had succeeded or whether we would need to find another way to expose Derek and Victoria's crimes. As Marcus began downloading the audio files, I thought about Emma sleeping peacefully in her bed, unaware that her mother had just taken the first major step toward getting justice for the humiliation she had suffered at Victoria's hands. Tomorrow, everything would change. Derek and Hayes would discover that their corrupt empire was about to come crashing down around them. Victoria would learn that treating family members like second-class citizens carried a price she had never imagined. But tonight, for the first time since Emma had been rejected from that birthday party, I felt something I had almost forgotten: hope. Hope that justice existed. Hope that good people could fight back against those who abused their power. Hope that my children would grow up in a world where corruption did not always win. The recordings would either confirm that hope or crush it entirely. We were about to find out which. Marcus's face grew increasingly grim as he played back the audio recordings from the listening devices. The sound quality was crystal clear, capturing every damning word of Derek and Hayes' conversation about rigging the courthouse project bid. But what we heard went far beyond what I had witnessed on the patio. This is bigger than we thought, Marcus said, pausing the playback. Listen to this conversation from earlier in the evening. He rewound to a section recorded about 30 minutes before I had observed Derek and Hayes on the patio. The voices were slightly muffled, but clearly audible, as Derek and Hayes discussed their ongoing corruption scheme in Derek's home office. "The Patterson Bridge project netted us $2.6 million last year," Derek's voice said through the speakers. "And the school renovation contracts brought in another $4 million over the past 18 months. At this rate, we will have enough offshore by the end of next year to retire if we want to." "The beauty of the system is that nobody questions municipal contracts," Hayes replied. "As long as I stay on the Public Works Committee and keep steering the big projects to Morrison Construction, we can keep this going indefinitely." My blood ran cold as I listened to them casually discuss stealing millions of dollars from public projects. Schools, bridges, municipal buildings, essential infrastructure that was supposed to serve the community, all compromised by their greed. But the most shocking revelation came when Hayes mentioned their escape plan. "The Cayman Islands account is up to $12 million now," Hayes said. "If anyone ever gets suspicious, we can be out of the country in 24 hours with enough money to live comfortably anywhere in the world." Marcus stopped the recording and looked at Lisa and me seriously. "We are not just dealing with bid rigging anymore. This is a major corruption and money laundering operation. Derek and Hayes have stolen at least $12 million from municipal contracts and hidden the money in offshore accounts." "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what we had uncovered. "We take this to the FBI," Lisa said firmly. "This is federal corruption involving interstate commerce and money laundering. The local police would not have the resources to investigate something this big." Marcus nodded. "I still have contacts at the Bureau. They will want to see these recordings and the financial evidence we have gathered. But Sarah, you need to understand that once we turn this over to federal investigators, there is no going back. Derek and Hayes will be arrested probably within days." "What about Victoria?" I asked. "How much did she know about Derek's illegal activities?" We got our answer when Marcus played another section of the recording. About an hour into this party, Victoria had entered Derek's office where he was showing Hayes some documents related to the courthouse project bid. "Darling, are you boring Robert with business talk again?" Victoria's voice came through clearly. "I keep telling Derek that he works too hard, but when you are making this much money from city contracts, it is hard to complain." "Your husband has certainly mastered the art of municipal contracting," Hayes replied with a laugh. "He always seems to know exactly what number to bid to win the projects." "Well, it helps having friends in the right places," Victoria said. "I always tell people that success is about who you know, not what you know. Robert has been such a blessing to our family." The casual way Victoria discussed their corrupt relationship made it clear she was not just aware of Derek's crimes, she was actively complicit in them. All that wealth she had used to humiliate my children was built on stolen public money, and she knew it. Marcus turned off the recording equipment and began copying the files onto secure drives. "I am calling my FBI contact tonight. They will probably want to set up a sting operation to catch Derek and Hayes in the act of submitting the rigged courthouse bid on Monday." "How long before they are arrested?" I asked. "If the FBI moves quickly, probably 48 to 72 hours. They will want to coordinate with the State Attorney General's office and possibly the Treasury Department for the money laundering charges." As we left Marcus's office that night, my head was spinning with the implications of what we had set in motion. In less than a week, Derek and Victoria's perfect life would be completely destroyed. Derek would be facing federal corruption charges that could put him in prison for decades. Victoria would lose everything. The house, the cars, the jewelry, all the status symbols she had used to lord over our family. But I felt no satisfaction yet. Until Derek and Hayes were actually in handcuffs, they were still free to hurt more people and steal more public money. Monday morning arrived with a sense of anticipation that made it impossible to concentrate at work. Somewhere across town, Derek was preparing to submit his rigged bid for the courthouse project, unaware that federal agents were watching his every move. Marcus called me during my lunch break with an update. The FBI has Derek's office under surveillance. They are waiting for him to submit the bid, and then they will move in with search warrants for both his business and home offices. What about Hayes? They will arrest him simultaneously at City Hall. The Bureau does not want to give either of them a chance to warn the other or destroy evidence. The afternoon dragged by as I waited for news. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, thinking it might be Marcus with updates on the arrests. Emma and Jake could sense my nervous energy when I picked them up from school, asking if everything was okay. "Everything is going to be fine, sweetheart," I told Emma as we walked home from school. "Better than fine, actually." At exactly 4:30 in the afternoon, my phone finally rang with the call I had been waiting for. "They got them," Marcus said, his voice filled with satisfaction. Derek was arrested at his office an hour ago when he submitted the courthouse bid. Hayes was arrested at City Hall at the same time. The FBI executed search warrants on both locations and Derek's house. Victoria was taken in for questioning. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, feeling a mixture of relief and disbelief. After weeks of planning and investigation, it was finally over. Derek and Hayes were in federal custody, facing charges that would likely put them away for years. "What happens now?" I asked. "The FBI found additional evidence during their searches that confirms everything we recorded. Bank records, communications with offshore accounts, documents showing other contractors who were cheated out of legitimate bids. This case is going to be huge, Sarah. Derek and Hayes are looking at serious federal prison time." That evening, as I tucked Emma and Jake into bed, I thought about how much our lives were about to change. Victoria and Derek's house would probably be seized by the government as part of the money laundering investigation. Their expensive cars, jewelry, and other assets would be sold to compensate the city for the stolen funds. Madison would probably have to change schools when the family lost their house. In a way, I felt sorry for her. She was an innocent child caught up in her parents' crimes, just like Emma and Jake had been innocent victims of Victoria's cruelty. But justice had finally been served. The people who thought they were too important to follow the law had learned they were wrong. The family members who had treated my children as second-class citizens were about to discover what it felt like to lose everything. Tomorrow, I would have to explain to Emma and Jake why their aunt and uncle were in the news for all the wrong reasons. But tonight, I could finally sleep peacefully knowing that corruption had been exposed, and the people responsible would face the consequences of their actions. The local news broke the story Tuesday morning with a headline that made me smile over my coffee. "Municipal corruption scandal rocks city contractor and councilman arrested in federal investigation." The reporter stood outside Derek's construction office, which was now wrapped in yellow tape and crawling with FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence. Emma looked up from her cereal bowl as the story played on our kitchen television. "Mommy, is that Uncle Derek's work?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said gently. "Uncle Derek made some very bad choices, and now he has to face the consequences." The news report detailed the scope of Derek and Hayes' corruption scheme. According to federal prosecutors, they had rigged municipal contract bids for over 3 years, stealing approximately $15 million in taxpayer money. The courthouse project alone would have netted them another $8 million if their scheme had not been exposed. My phone had been ringing all morning with calls from reporters who had somehow gotten my number wanting comments about my connection to the Morrison family. I let them all go to voicemail. This story belonged to the victims of Derek and Hayes' corruption. The legitimate contractors who had lost work, the taxpayers who had been cheated the public projects that had been compromised by their greed. The most satisfying call came from Lisa, who was working on a follow-up investigative piece about the broader implications of municipal corruption. "Sarah, I wanted you to know that 5 other contractors have come forward since the arrests were announced," she said. They all suspected something was wrong with the bidding process, but were afraid to speak up. Your courage in exposing this has given them the confidence to tell their stories. What about Victoria? I asked. The news reports just said she was questioned and released. From what I understand, the FBI does not have enough evidence to charge her with criminal conspiracy, but she is definitely going to face civil penalties. The government is seizing all assets purchased with the stolen funds, which includes their house cars, jewelry, basically everything they own. 3 days later, I was loading groceries into my car when I spotted a familiar figure in the parking lot of the discount store where I shopped. Victoria stood beside a battered sedan that had seen better days, looking lost and overwhelmed as she stared at a shopping list. Gone was the polished, perfectly dressed woman who had dismissed my children as discount store kids. Victoria's hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt that looked like they had come from a charity donation bin. The transformation was so complete that I almost did not recognize her. Our eyes met across the parking lot, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then Victoria slowly walked over to where I was standing. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Sarah," she said quietly, "I suppose you have heard what happened." "I have," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Part of me wanted to gloat, to throw her cruel words back in her face and ask how it felt to be the one shopping at discount stores. But looking at her broken expression, I found I could not summon that level of cruelty. "Derek says you are the one who exposed him," Victoria continued. "The FBI told him someone had been recording his conversations." I did not confirm or deny her accusation. "Derek exposed himself, Victoria. He chose to steal from public contracts. He chose to corrupt city officials. Those were his decisions." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "Madison had to leave her private school. We lost the house, the cars, everything. She does not understand why her life has been turned upside down." "Emma did not understand why you excluded her from Madison's birthday party either," I said quietly. "Children suffer when the adults in their lives make cruel choices." Victoria flinched as if I had slapped her. "I know I treated you and the kids badly. I was wrong and I am sorry. I got caught up in the money and the status and I forgot what really mattered." Her apology was probably sincere, but it was also 3 years too late. The damage to Emma's self-esteem, the family relationships that had been poisoned by Victoria's snobbery, the pattern of exclusion and humiliation, none of that could be erased by a parking lot confession. "Where are you living now?" I asked. "A rental apartment across town. Madison and I are staying there while Derek is in federal detention awaiting trial. His lawyer says he might get 15 to 20 years if he is convicted on all charges." The magnitude of Derek's fall was staggering. From millionaire contractor to federal prisoner in less than a week. It was the kind of swift justice that rarely happened in real life, but corruption cases moved quickly once federal agencies got involved. "I should go," Victoria said, glancing around the parking lot as if embarrassed to be seen shopping at the same store she had once mocked. "I am sorry, Sarah, for everything." As she walked away, pushing a cart with squeaky wheels toward the store entrance, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction at seeing justice served sadness for Madison, who was suffering for her parents' crimes, and a strange kind of closure that I had not expected to feel. That evening, I sat Emma and Jake down for a conversation about what had happened to their aunt and uncle. I explained that sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt other people, and that there are consequences for those choices. I told them that Derek had stolen money that was supposed to be used for schools and roads and other important things that help everyone in the community. "Will Aunt Victoria and Madison be okay?" Emma asked with the kind of innocent concern that made my heart ache. "They will be okay eventually," I said. They are going through a hard time right now because of the bad choices Uncle Derek made, but they will figure out how to rebuild their lives. Can Madison come to my next birthday party? Emma asked. Since she probably will not have a fancy party anymore, the generosity of my 8-year-old daughter, who wanted to include the cousin who had been present when she was excluded, brought tears to my eyes. That would be very kind of you, sweetheart. We will see what happens. 6 months later, Emma did invite Madison to her 9th birthday party. It was a modest celebration in our small apartment with cake from the grocery store and games that cost nothing but provided hours of laughter. Madison came wearing clothes that were clearly secondhand, but with a smile that was genuine for the first time in years. Victoria brought Madison to the party and stayed for a few minutes, thanking me quietly for Emma's kindness. She looked healthier than she had in the parking lot that day, as if the stress of maintaining her false lifestyle had been lifted along with the wealth that had supported it. Derek was eventually sentenced to 18 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the city. Hayes received a similar sentence. The courthouse project was rebid through a transparent process, and the legitimate contractor who won completed the work for $2 million less than Derek's rigged bid would have cost taxpayers. The money recovered from Derek and Hayes' offshore accounts was used to fund additional public works projects that had been delayed due to budget constraints. New schools got the renovation funding they had been waiting for. Bridge repairs that had been postponed were finally completed. The stolen money was returned to its intended purpose, serving the public good. As I watch my children play in the park, built with some of that recovered money, I think about the lessons this experience taught all of us. Emma learned that standing up to bullies, even family bullies, is worth the risk. Jake learned that money does not make someone a better person. Madison learned that kindness matters more than status. And I learned that sometimes karma does not just happen on its own. Sometimes good people have to take action to make sure justice is served. Have you ever had to stand up to toxic family members who thought they were better than everyone else? What would you have done in my situation when someone called your children discount store kids? Share your own stories about family drama and justice in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing how other people have dealt with similar situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life tales about standing up to bullies and getting justice. Share this video with anyone who has ever been made to feel less than worthy by their own family members. Thank you for listening to my story about how corruption and cruelty ultimately got the consequences they deserved. Remember that sometimes the best revenge is simply making sure the truth comes to light. Justice might take time, but it is worth fighting for, especially when the people we love are being hurt by those who think they are untouchable. Until next time, keep standing up for what is right and never let anyone make you or your children feel like you are not good enough. You are worthy of respect no matter what your bank account says.